I had always thought our marriage was built on trust, understanding, and shared dreams. My wife, Samantha, and I had been together for 7 years, married for 4, and I had believed, perhaps naively, that we were aligned in every major decision. I was a man who worked hard, tried to communicate openly, and cherished the quiet moments we shared after long, exhausting days. But last week, everything changed with a single text from Los Angeles. It came while I was finishing up a client meeting, my phone buzzing incessantly. I glanced down, expecting perhaps a casual update or a question about dinner plans. Instead, my chest tightened as I read, "I think we need an open marriage. I can't be tied down to one person anymore." At first, I stared at the message, unable to comprehend the audacity, the sheer suddenness of it. I reread it 3 times, hoping that maybe I had misread the words. But no, the sentence sat there on my screen, blunt and cold, like a declaration rather than a question. I had no idea she was thinking along these lines. No hints, no warning, nothing. Samantha had flown to Los Angeles for a work project that was supposed to be routine. Our plan was that she'd be gone for 3 weeks, and we would catch up over calls each night. But now, the distance she had promised to maintain for professional purposes had turned into a platform for her to reveal her secret desires, or perhaps her selfishness. I took a deep breath and stared at the ceiling, trying to collect my thoughts. My mind raced through memories of our life together. The nights we spent laughing in our tiny apartment, the weekends we devoted to renovating our first home, the times I had gone out of my way to support her dreams without asking for anything in return. I thought of how I had trusted her completely, never imagining that she would casually toss the foundation of our marriage aside with a few words on a screen. And yet, I knew this wasn't just about her desires. It was about control, testing boundaries, and seeing how far I would bend before breaking. Her text wasn't seeking a conversation. It was issuing an ultimatum. And deep down, I realized that my response would define not just this marriage, but the way I valued myself in the years to come. I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity, each passing second amplifying a growing fire of disbelief, hurt, and determination. My life had taught me to act, to measure my response carefully, and to never show weakness in the face of betrayal. But how do you respond when the betrayal arrives not through deception, but through brazen, unapologetic honesty? I typed her name into my phone again, hesitated, and then read her text one more time. "I think we need an open marriage. I can't be tied down to one person anymore." The words stung like cold steel. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I refused to respond immediately. This wasn't the kind of conversation to rush. I needed clarity, clarity about what she meant, clarity about our future, and clarity about myself. Samantha had always been spontaneous, a whirlwind of energy and ambition. She loved freedom, yes, but I had believed that our love had boundaries strong enough to contain it. Apparently, I had been wrong. As I scrolled through old messages, I realized that in our pursuit of harmony, I had stopped noticing subtle changes. The late-night calls that she guarded carefully, the vague excuses when plans conflicted with her sudden important social events, and the way her tone had slowly shifted over the past few months. I had dismissed them as work stress, fatigue, or temporary mood swings. I finally tapped a response. "We need to talk when you get back." I didn't say anything more. No anger, no pleading, no bargaining. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't dismissing her wishes, but that this was not a decision to be made lightly, and certainly not over a text message from thousands of miles away. The next few days were unbearable. I replayed our life together in my head, dissecting every memory, every word, every laugh, trying to see if I had missed the signs. But there were none, at least none I could pinpoint with certainty. It was as though the ground had shifted beneath me while I was sleeping, and I had awoken to a reality I couldn't immediately process. Her flight ended, and she called once or twice, her voice casual, almost rehearsed. I remained calm, even detached, refusing to let my anxiety or hurt dictate my responses. I could feel the power in my restraint, the subtle tension growing between us. Samantha was used to being in control, used to getting her way, and now she was realizing that the man she had built her life with wasn't going to bend so easily. When she finally returned, the airport was bustling with travelers, yet in my mind, it felt like a private arena. She smiled, probably expecting me to greet her with the same enthusiasm I always did. But I didn't. I stood there, suitcase in hand, observing her. For the first time in years, she saw uncertainty in my eyes, a reflection of disbelief that I had never shown before. That was my leverage, my subtle statement that this was no longer a casual discussion. The rules had changed. And in that instant, I realized that this confrontation was not about winning or losing. It was about defining boundaries, asserting respect, and demanding recognition of my worth. Whatever she expected from me, whatever fantasies of freedom she imagined, they would now collide with the reality of someone who had decided to take his power back. The ride home from the airport was silent. Samantha kept glancing at me, clearly expecting some form of emotional outburst or an apology for misunderstanding her needs. But I remained calm, measured, and deliberate. I could see the uncertainty creeping into her expressions, the same uncertainty that had never been there before. It was subtle but unmistakable. She was realizing that the man she had once taken for granted would no longer tolerate being marginalized. Back at our apartment, I set down my keys and turned to her. "We need to be honest," I said, my voice steady. "Not just about your desires, but about what this marriage means. I won't accept an open marriage, not over text, not over calls, and certainly not without mutual respect and understanding. You can't just demand freedom while expecting me to remain the same man you've always had." Her lips parted slightly, caught off guard by my firmness. She tried to interject, to justify her stance, but I held up my hand. "No, let me finish." I outlined my perspective, not angrily, but with unwavering clarity. That trust was earned, not given. That intimacy, respect, and loyalty weren't negotiable commodities, and that our marriage could not survive on unilateral decisions or selfish whims. For the first time, Samantha seemed to pause, really listen, and comprehend the weight of her actions. I didn't need to shout or manipulate. The words themselves, the conviction behind them, were enough to make her pause and reflect. I noticed the tension in her shoulders, the hesitation in her voice. She realized that this wasn't just a conversation about preferences or fantasies. It was about boundaries, self-respect, and accountability. Over the next few days, the distance she had assumed she could take in Los Angeles vanished. Her casual demands, her dismissive tone, her sense of entitlement, all of it met with quiet, deliberate resistance. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't punishing. I was simply reclaiming my power, asserting that I would no longer be disregarded or diminished. And slowly, subtly, she began to understand that freedom comes with responsibility and that unilateral desires in a partnership can't override mutual respect. By the end of the week, she was quieter, more reflective. The audacity of her original demand had dissipated under the weight of her own recognition that she had underestimated me, underestimated the foundation of trust and dignity upon which I had built not only my marriage, but my life. And in that realization, I found not revenge, but resolution. The marriage would either move forward on equal terms, or it would end, and I would remain unbroken. Because in the end, some boundaries are non-negotiable. Some betrayals demand clarity, courage, and decisiveness. And when you assert yourself with calm, unwavering conviction, the universe has a way of setting things straight. Samantha had learned that the hard way, and I had reclaimed the respect I had always deserved.